I'm happy to introduce you to Peggy Thompson from WIFT Vancouver. And an amazing person, originally from Vancouver, today living in LA, Tara Armstrong, who is a showrunner. Let the play begin, ladies.
Hi. Hi. Thank you everyone for tuning in and joining us. It's so wonderful to see you all chatting away and introducing yourselves on the thing. Oh, brother. I'm Peggy Thompson. I'm a screenwriter, teacher, and film producer in Vancouver, Canada. And I'm going to be chatting with Tara Armstrong for the first part of this session, and then she'll take your questions. And just before we go to questions, we'll talk a little bit about where to go from here in terms of the pandemic and our lives and our writing practices. Before we get going, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional and unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people. Thank you. Tara, it's wonderful to see you. How are you doing?
I'm good. It's so nice to see you too, because we hadn't talked for quite a while. So yeah. I feel like we should say like how we know each other.
Okay, I was going to, but later, but I'll do it now.
Yeah.
I was a prof at UBC, the University of British Columbia, for many years, and Tara was one of my students. And in the writing workshop, in an undergrad writing workshop, I think, or a grad, I'm not sure. You were an undergrad. You might have been in a grad workshop.
I was an undergrad, yeah.
Yeah, you submitted Mary Kills People. And everybody, which is her series that she's going to be talking about today, and everybody kind of went, oh my God, somebody just brought in the Rosetta Stone or something. It was like, it was so close to what we saw on television when it premiered. It was fantastic. And the script then had all the kind of underlying tensions, the crazy behavior, the passionate feeling of a hit television show, which is what it went on to become. So Tara, hello.
Hi. I just have to say, I mean, yes. So when I was a student at UBC, Peggy was my teacher, and I actually graduated with my undergrad, and after graduation I wrote Mary Kills People, but I wrote like an 85-page version. Like I just remember being kind of like that feeling of not knowing, you're out of school now and you don't know what to do and where you're going. And I remember distinctly, and this is like years ago, like I don't know, maybe like 7 years ago or something, I remember writing this email to you, basically saying, I don't know what I'm doing. I graduated, I've got this pilot, and I'm lost, and can you help me? and you invited me to join 2 other students who were grad students in a workshop. And I don't even know that you know this, Peggy, but those 2 people are Ryan Bright and Lindy Parker Vega. And we continue to have a writer's workshop. We talk every Sunday, and we are as involved. This is like 7-8 years later. They are like my first readers for everything. We have a constant communication where, you know, we've all sort of read up on each other's work, and we're able to just sort of like text each other and be like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this change. What do you think? And that the whole thing has just been so beneficial in my life and with Mary Kills People and with everything. So yeah, I just wanted to say thank you.
Well, thank you, Anna. And I knew you were still in touch, but I didn't realize it was weekly. So that is fabulous. And that is so that's a big part of your process now.
Absolutely. And I think in terms of like just speaking about this crazy situation that we're in right now, where we're all sort of isolated in our homes, having that weekly, Sunday, it's Sunday morning and it's happening, and and half the time we are giving notes, but they're also just sort of therapy sessions, like whatever, because writing is hard. And so yeah, it's been amazing to have that.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for your work. So, okay, there we go. I have notes because I need them, just so you know. It's not that my attention is wandering. So Tara is the talented creator of the critically acclaimed series, Mary Kills People, which ran for 3 seasons, 2017 to 2019. Was aired in Canada on the Global Broadcasting Network, in the US on Lifetime, in the UK on Channel 4's More 4, and no doubt many other networks as well. She's also written for the series Traveler and Private Eye. And now she's in LA, and we're going to talk about the writer's life in LA as well today. But how we're going to do today, as Helen said, I'm going to ask Tara about her career path, her journey from Vancouver to Toronto, where she pitched and sold her series, Mary Kills People. Guess what it's about? And for those of you who aren't familiar with Canada, and I think there will probably be a few today, Vancouver, where I am and where Tara was a student, is on the west coast of Canada. And while we have some original and wonderful Canadian drama production here, we're mostly a service provider for the US series and films who come here to film, to the tune of about $3 billion a year. But there's not that much original drama in British Columbia, in Vancouver. So what happens is that you have to go to Toronto at some point. That's the center of the heartland of Canadian film financing and making and all those things. So I'm just gonna, so Tara left Vancouver, went to Toronto with the screenplay, and got Mary on the air. And that's just crazy. That never happens. But it did. But Tara's a remarkable person and a remarkable writer, and she really understands tension. Not in life, but in story. Or maybe in life too. In life too. Yeah. So we're going to explore her experiences showrunning the show in series 2, some craft issues, what tensions are needed in the story to keep it moving, what makes for a strong female lead, and then we'll take your questions, and you can start writing them in at any point. And we'll also talk about what should we be writing now. I'm writing haiku. I don't think any are going to get produced as films. So Terry, Mary Kills People, tell us about it. What's the story?
Mary Kills People is about a doctor named Mary who is running an illegal euthanasia business. So yeah, I wrote this, back to my time at UBC, when I did the undergrad in creative writing. I was just very, very obsessed with death, and everything that I was writing, whether it was a nonfiction class or a fiction class or whatever, was about death. And I had this, I did a nonfiction class, and we had an immersive article that we had to do, and we could go into a place of our choosing and interview the people that worked or lived there or whatever. And I went into a hospice. And that, I would say, really informed this character and why I wanted to write this. I just thought that the people, I was really scared of death. And so I wanted to kind of look it right in the eye and talk to people that deal with it every day and understand what they know about it. And I just had this idea one day about this doctor that was performing the service for people, and then I wrote it over the course of a couple of years. I wrote that pilot. It took a long time to get it into good shape, and countless workshops, and but yeah.
Wow. And so Mary is a single mom.
Mm-hmm.
She's a doctor, right? So
Mm-hmm.
those elements are quite familiar to a television audience. But then we have the euthanasia, which kind of makes the story unique. And just briefly, tell us about the other characters, the ones who are on her tail.
Yeah. Well, she has a doctor that she does this with, who is also her longest friend, and his name is Des. And yeah, they do this together. And I really wanted to do a platonic male-female relationship, just because I feel like we don't see it a lot, because we want to watch love stories, and that's great, and that all makes sense. But I just wanted to do like a male-female platonic relationship, and truly it is. They're almost like brother and sister. And then there is Ben, who is a police officer who is on her case and actually poses as a person who needs her services and is terminally ill. And then at the end of the pilot, it is revealed that he's actually a police officer. And then they have a very complicated relationship. He's also the love interest. Yeah. Yeah.
Good. And you started off, because I remember you working as a production coordinator or some such thing.
Yes.
You came to UBC.
Yes. And that's one of one of the things that I'm so grateful that I did. I've made a lot of mistakes. I've done a few things right. But I'm so grateful that I had production experience going into the show actually getting made, because I knew the rhythm of production. I worked for free at a production company, just volunteered, and then that led to a job as a office production assistant, and I was getting people lunches and taking out the garbage. And I also was a production assistant on set, where you're literally staring at a truck for 15 hours. And I'm so grateful now that I had that experience, because it already, making a television show is so crazy and so overwhelming in many ways. But like, had I gone in and not had any of that production experience, I would have been like, what? Like, just so overwhelmed. So I really recommend that, getting some production experience, especially there's so many people here from Vancouver. And hopefully when the world goes back to normal, production will resume there in Vancouver. And I think there's lots of, I also worked at a casting agency, and that was, all of it is so helpful for when you're actually going to make your own show.
Great. So after UBC and after the script was done, it was suggested you go to the Canadian Film Centre. So you applied, and off you went. And that took you to Toronto. So tell us a little bit about, because people won't necessarily know what the Canadian Film Centre is, and so on.
So the Canadian Film Centre is a program in Toronto, and there's a film program, and there's also a television program. And the television program, which is what I did, is a simulated writer's room. So a showrunner will actually come in with the show, and you and the other people that are in the program will actually break the show, write the episodes. It's like exactly like a writer's room. And a lot of people know Orphan Black. That's where Orphan Black came from. And then the year that I was in, the showrunner Brad Wright brought in this show called Travelers, and then he went on to actually get it made. So, it's really like real world experience, which is amazing, because, it's being thrown into a writer's room when you haven't had that experience can be overwhelming. So it's a great program. I applied twice before I got in. I applied straight out of UBC, or while I was still in UBC, I think, and I got not shortlisted, didn't get an interview or anything, just nothing. And so I encourage people to, if you want to do that program, apply more than once, because I know people that have applied 3 times and gotten in on the 3rd time. They want to see that you're continuing to pursue this and continuing to evolve as a writer. So it took me 2 times. It's a great program. It really also does introduce you to everybody in the film industry in Canada, which is wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just, sometimes it seems like it's a big dating service, not dating,
Totally. Yeah.
meeting and greeting.
Yeah, it really is.
And so there you are in Toronto, writing for Travelers, because I know you have a credit on that series, at the Film Center. And I am assuming you were pitching Mary to people at the same time, or?
So I had written the pilot. It was, to go to the CFC, you have to submit an original and a spec script, which I believe is still the case. I'm not sure. But so I had written the pilot, but as you said, it is so much like a dating. You meet every single person in the industry. You meet all the agents. They come in, and so I, through that, met my agent, who was really excited about Mary Kills People, and I also, out of the CFC, applied for this program to go to the Banff television conference. And so I got that, and I went there. And while I was there, or before I was there, E1 had optioned Mary Kills People. And while we were at the television conference, we pitched it to all the networks, because everyone's there. And so we pitched all the networks there. And I mean, I think it was, this is all like a few years ago, so I'm trying to remember, but it was shortly after that it one of the networks wanted it, and so the deal was made, and it was briefly in development and then got ordered.
And how was that? There you are. Suddenly, the dream has come true. How was that?
It was, yeah, I think that, and in reflecting upon all of it, it all happened so quickly. I wish I was like more present for it in a way. Now, like the next thing that, hopefully, knock on wood, I get to do something else, and I want to try to enjoy it more and be a little bit more present, because I think, it is difficult making a show, and you're just, it's all consuming, and but it was great. It was amazing. It was the biggest learning experience of my life. Like, it's really true that you don't know what you don't know. And I certainly don't know everything now, but I know so much more than I did before that show started, because you go through it.
So there you are. It's been ordered for season 1. How did the writer's room come together? And did you have a sense of where the first season would go already, or not?
I would say I had instincts for sure, but in terms of actual sort of plot, no, I didn't. And the writer's room was very small. So a showrunner, Tassie Cameron, was brought on. One of my great friends, Marsha Green, who I had worked with. The one other writing job I had done was working on this Canadian show called Private Eyes, and I had met Marcia there, and we got along amazing. So she's amazing. So we brought her on, and then we had one other writer, Mike Goldbeck, for the first season. So really small, which is really, I like a small writer's room, and really people that are all those people are so talented and really care about the material and like really care about like producing something great. And so that's wonderful. And yeah, we, started working on the season, and it all happened really quickly. We also were block shooting, which meant that all the scripts, so one director, Holly Dale, came in and directed the entire first season. And so we block shot all 6 episodes, which means they all need to be done before you start production, essentially. You can you can do rewriting like of dialogue and whatnot, but like the locations are locked, everything's locked. And that has its pros and cons. It's great because when you're able to do all the scripts to completion, you're able to sort of layer in things in the storyline that you wouldn't be able to if you're just sort of going week to week, as a lot of episodic television is.
And can you explain, because some people may not know what block shooting is? Yes.
So in most television, especially network, you're shooting episodically. So, and it's often one director will come in for each episode, and they're kind of a director for hire, and they'll come in and they'll shoot their episode in isolation, and you're churning out the scripts to do that. And so yes, you know where you're going, but the scripts aren't actually written, whereas we did the entire shoot, all 6 episodes, over the course of the entire production. So we, on the first day of shooting, we shot a scene from, I think the very first scene we did was like a scene from episode 4 or something. So also difficult for the actors, because the actors have to keep in mind where they are emotionally in the storyline and in their arc. But yeah, so on any given day, you could be shooting from 3 different episodes completely out of order.
But in the same location, so it's location driven shooting, and it is challenging. So tell us about finding Mary, because you needed someone who could be assertive, aggressive, dangerous, and vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, Caroline Davernus is like my favorite person in the world, and she is Mary. She just is Mary. And we are so lucky. Like that show was going to be made or broken on that casting. And I just feel like she brought everything to it. We saw, because I was shot in Canada and it was Canadian content, it did have to be a Canadian. And she's from Quebec. And I believe it was actually we had a US casting agent, and they brought her up. And like the second, I actually didn't know who she was. And the second I watched her reel, I was like, oh my God, that's Mary. That's nice. That's, yeah. And everybody else agreed. And yeah. And she's so amazing. And she's the nicest person to work with, and so professional. And yeah.
Great. So, and can we just talk a little bit about creating the character? So, as she goes through the series, it's kind of cat and mouse, if that makes sense. She's being pursued, although she doesn't necessarily know it. Was that the main thing to keep? What was the main storyline? Was it the people who she was assisting death, or was it the chase from the and the jeopardy from
I always
doing
thought,
that.
yeah, I always thought of it as like there were three engines of that show. There was the cat and mouse, which was also the love interest storyline. There were the patients,
Yes.
and there was her work life and her family life, which were always complicated by what she was choosing to do illicitly.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how we looked at it when breaking the story.
And the third one?
Oh, so the patients, the cat and mouse, and the just her balancing her family and work life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. Good. So that's a lot of engine, and I guess that's what you need.
Yeah. Yes. You need an engine.
You need three, apparently.
Yeah.
So season 1 airs,
Mhm.
gets wonderful reviews. It gets renewed. Oh, the terror. You're back heading up, and now you're heading up the writer's room. And did you have a sense of, again, before, hey, season 1's done, phew, oh no, now what? Or did you know?
Well, what I remember from that is that I was in the editing room for all of it as well, and for first season, and I love it. I mean, I didn't know that going into this, but I love the editing process. I love the writing. Production's really hard because there's a million things going on at once, and then editing is like you finally get to rewrite the story
Yes.
again, and we had amazing editors, and I loved working with them. So, but I was finished in the editing room on a Friday, and we started the development room for season 2 on a Monday. So like I didn't have a break or anything. But I think, on those when you're starting a writer's room for anything, I think before you start getting into like all the plot, what's going to happen, just like I work really like intuitively, which is hard, but I have little bits of inspiration or like things that I've read that I don't even know what they mean, but I know they mean something, and I know they're going to be here, they're going to be relevant. And like I think having a writer's room where you can kind of share those ideas and have other people come in with things that inspire them, and just like talk really philosophically about everything, and then like just give your time, like have some time to do that, and then start talking about plot.
Okay, interesting.
That's what I like.
Good.
That's, yeah, because everything that I write is kind of, it has to mean something to me, like on a sort of deeper level of something that I am personally trying to work out, or something that is upsetting me, or whatever it is. I need to have like that thing, and so to like talk about that in the writer's room and go from there.
Nice. So then season 2, and then here you are with a very successful series, season 3, it's been renewed, and you leave Canada.
I did.
You left.
I did. I left Canada.
That's okay.
There's a lot of us.
Right.
There's I don't even know why, but ever since I was a child, like before I was even a writer or knew I wanted to be a writer, I wanted to live in LA. And I didn't even know what it was. I'd never been here. So in between season 2 and knowing if there was a season 3, I moved to LA. And kind of like, oh, maybe it'll just be temporary. I don't know. But when I got here, I just loved it so much. And I mean, personally, I met my partner, and just things started happening down here. And so, and I had also sort of at the same time felt like, in terms of Mary, I had given like everything I could give to it in a way. I consulted on the development room of the third season, but then I decided to stay in LA and let others take over Mary.
Amazing.
Yeah.
And I asked you by email, because I assume you were down there pitching. I said, is there a difference between pitching in Canada and pitching in LA? And you said, oh, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think that especially right now, it's so strange because everybody's pitching on Zoom, which is hard, you know. I personally am not pitching right now. I've just heard stories about that. But here, I mean, I don't think there's any one way to do anything at all. I think that there's many ways to pitch successfully or get a show made, whether it's writing the script first or not. But it seems like what's happening right now, like the trend in LA is people going in and pitching out like a full series and not having a script written. Like it's almost like people don't want to see the script and they just want to hear the pitch and then make the decision based on that. I feel like I have to write the script to know what the show is. So yeah, I'm just writing something brand new right now, just by myself.
Do you want to talk about it, or you don't have to? Because I always never talk about what I'm writing.
I know it's probably too soon. It's probably too soon.
No, fair enough. And you ended up getting working with HBO on something. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So part of moving down here, through my Canadian agent, also got an American agent, and then I also got an American manager. And when I had moved down here, down here they have meetings that are called general meetings, and you just go and meet executives at all the different production companies and studios, and it's also back to speed dating. It's kind of like speed dating. You just go and, you know, and talk to they're aware of you, they've read your script or they've seen the show or whatever. So, and you just go, and it can seem kind of overwhelming because you're kind of like, to what end am I doing this? But you end up making connections with certain people, and so I had gone on generals, and I would say of those generals, I have like 3 or 4 people that I really just connected with, like on a creative level, like what we like our favorite shows are, or what we want to do. And that's the whole purpose of doing them, to find these people. So I had gone on a general at HBO, and this was like months earlier. And then I think I had been here for about, I don't know, 6 months or something like that. And my agent got an email from them, and they just said, would Tara be interested in coming in and co-writing a pilot that was already written, but they wanted to bring on another writer. It was written by a writer named Lee Rose. And do you know her?
I know the name. Yeah.
Oh, she's great. And so I met with Lee and we talked about it, and I ended up getting hired to come on and rewrite the pilot with her, which was great. And I really loved what she'd done, and I loved the characters. Like for me, I really have to be all in on a project and like really see like this thing needs to exist out there in the world. And I really felt like that with this, just in terms of the women were there. It's about 2 women, and they were just great characters, and women we don't normally see on TV. And yeah, but HBO passed on it, and I think Lee is going to try to take it out elsewhere and see what happens. But it was great. It was a great experience.
And that sort of segues into another question, and then we'll talk about what to do now. Words of advice for the state of house arrest we're all in is also known as the writer's life. Was it harder to sell? I mean, I know the answer to this question. Why, okay, let's go. Why is it harder to sell a series or a film with a female protagonist? Or is it? Or is it?
I don't know that it is. I'm going to say it isn't.
Okay, based on your experience, yeah?
I just don't think it is. I think if anything, it might be the opposite now. You know, people want, and especially in LA, people want different. People want something that they haven't seen a million times. And so I think like uniqueness is really, I don't know, respected here. And they're looking for that interesting point of view, or yeah.
And then before we just go to start taking questions, what should we be writing now? Or like,
Well,
where are we at?
I mean, as you said, I think it's like in many ways, our lives as writers have not changed that much, in that what we are doing is showing up in front of our computer every day and banging out pages and trying to just keep going. I think that the anxiety of where we're at can be an impediment to that. And I know like I felt that at the beginning of this, and then I sort of settled into where we are in the world right now. But I don't think, in terms of like what we should be writing, I don't think that it's changed. I think that you should be writing the thing that really matters the most to you, and the thing that you feel the most passionately about, and the thing that is you. I just think that that's the most important thing that you can do. It's like such a cliche, but you should just, I think the best thing you can do as a writer is to be yourself and find your voice, and reveal your point of view, because that is what's going to connect. And so long ago, I heard this, right? I think it was actually when I was at UBC. I think it was just written on a whiteboard, and it was like anonymous, but it was something like, the more specific you can be about your reality, the more likely it's going to have meaning to someone else. And I've always thought about that. Like the thing that you're afraid to write, or that you feel is like too honest or too revealing, it's like, that's the thing you have to write.
Great. Okay.
I'm just
good.
plugging in the computer because I just realized I need to plug it in. 1 second. I'm
so
back.
You won't vanish.
That was it. Yeah.
Good. Okay, Regina, are you ready to move to questions?
Yes, I am. Can you?
Okay.
Yes, you can hear me. Fantastic. I'll just be this phantom voice from the background here. But I would say we'll just start with the questions from the top, and try to go through them. And we have one, and that is, Tara, can you tell us more about how you got in front of the right people to get your show picked up, and whether you need the perfect Bible to go along with your pilot, or if the pilot is the real seller?
Again, I think that, and I can only speak to my experience, and I think there's a million different ways to get somewhere, but what worked for me in terms of getting in front of the right people was definitely starting at going to UBC and doing the undergrad, which also led to doing the CFC. And like, you just continue going along and like slowly building your network of people. And meeting someone and making an impression on someone that can, make a recommendation for you. And that's ultimately how I've gotten everywhere, is just by asking people for help. Most of the time it's scary to ask for help, but most of the time, nobody's gonna reject you or say, no, I'm not gonna have coffee with you. And even if they do, you'll be okay. But they probably won't. Second part of the question, okay, whether you need a perfect Bible. I didn't have a Bible. I did have I did have like a 9-page document that outlined the series, but it wasn't hugely detailed, or it didn't say like what is the end of season 5 or whatever. So I don't think so. However, now I do think that in LA anyways, there is this interesting trend of more, it seems like things are getting sold based on a sort of more Bible pitch type thing rather than the script.
Okay, go, Regina.
Cool.
Carry on.
Next one would be, what elements or mistakes did you make in your first drafts that you changed in later drafts, and why?
Oh my God. I mean, my writing process is like me stumbling around in a dark room looking for a light that may or may not be there. Like, my writing process is so messy, and I basically start with, like, as I was saying before, like some weird piece of inspiration that I don't even know what it means, and I just start writing. I do outlines because I just need somewhere mentally, like knowing I'm going somewhere, but I usually deviate from them. But I would say, I mean, the thing I'm writing now, it's like I have gone down all sorts of wild roads on that I haven't lead to nowhere. Like the things that end up on the cutting room floor, it's crazy. So I'm not recommending that necessarily, but I've come to accept that that's my process, and I'm making peace with it. So I think, yeah, I hope that answers the questions. I think helpful things at the beginning of a script is like, when you go to write a scene, like know what the person wants in the scene, that they have an objective, and yeah.
Cool. One question from Daria. Is it important to write spec scripts? Should they be current shows?
This is a question that many people have different opinions on. My personal opinion is I don't think it's valuable to spend your time writing a spec script. It can be valuable in getting a job, and some showrunners do want to see that. But I personally would rather see who you are as a writer, and rather than like, can you mimic another show? I think, yes, they should typically be current shows. Although one of my friends said she was going to do a spec script for Golden Girls, and I was like, that's a great idea. See, that's a spec script I almost feel like would get you more attention because it's like a really old show. So, yeah.
Cool. The next question is, as a TV creator, are you automatically on the writing team?
Oh, I mean, yes. I'm sure that there's scenarios where maybe people have been booted off their own show, but yes, typically yes.
Cool. And then one question from Daisy Shields. Did you find that your story stayed true to what you had imagined it to be, or did it change with the different writers? And then what was that experience like?
I think that it definitely stayed true in terms of the bigger ideas about like who the characters are and tonally and that kind of thing. But I think you have to be open to it changing, because people are gonna have better ideas than you a lot of the time, and like you need to be open to that and be able to recognize when something that you thought was right, if there's a better option there. And I think and I want that. Like all I want in a writer's room is like someone to come up with a better idea than me. Because then that means I don't have to do it. So yeah, I think you just have to, it's like, you just have to be open and know that everything is going to change and go with the flow.
Cool. And then one specific question, what did contract negotiation look like to stay as involved with the show as you are? It sounds like you helped cast it as well. Did you only have the pilot written, or did you have other episodes? Are there other writers on the show? Okay, many questions in one.
I can see them too, so it's okay.
Okay.
Sorry, where did I go? Well, the contract, I do have a lawyer, and I recommend having a lawyer, because they make sure all of that you're properly represented. I would say, with this, I did just have the pilot written. There, I didn't have any other episodes written. But if you write the pilot, you're always forever created by.
Mm-hmm. That's
contractually, as per the Writers Guild, you are the creator of the show, and you are. There are different. Like I believe if someone else was to come in and co-write it with you, then there's a chance that they could, if they change it significantly, then they also would possibly get created by, but like that didn't happen here. Yes.
Cool. Let's go on to Deborah, and she asks, can non-Canadian citizens apply to the Canadian Film Centre, where you work in simulated writers' rooms? No.
Sadly.
Okay. Good. Quick answer. One question from Linda. Where did you pitch, and where do you pitch, and what programs do you use?
Where do I pitch in terms of, I wonder, I mean, I'm not quite sure what that means, but when you pitch, typically when we're not in a lockdown, you would go in and physically pitch to networks. And now they are all happening on Zoom. And then in terms of what programs do you use, I'm not sure.
Screenwriting programs?
Yeah, I don't know. Screenwriting programs? Well, I use Screenwriter. There's also Final Draft, but I prefer Screenwriter.
And so, yeah, when you're pitching in LA, do you go to the studios, or I guess you go to people's offices?
Yeah, you go to offices. Yeah.
And I remember pitching in LA a number of years ago, kind of pre the massive switch to everything digital. And I was in a studio office waiting to have a pitch meeting. And there were a couple of younger people in the room reading scripts. And just from what I could count from my chair where I was waiting, I counted over 250 scripts that were out. And that wasn't even going into the filing cabinets. And so knowing this, and you know this, when you go into the room, what's your tip for not being completely panicked by the fact that, these people read hundreds and hundreds of scripts a year, and they really a lot of them really understand story very well.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm totally free from panic when I'm doing things like this all the time. But that's okay. I think it's like it's okay to be afraid and do something anyways, and it actually shows that you really care. Uh, but yeah, I mean, all you can do is just go in and tell the story, tell this person, like this person is a person, and tell them why you want to write something and what it means to you, and be as passionate and as articulate and clear in your vision as possible. And I mean, you are going to be rejected. Like that's writing is like being rejected over and over and over again, and you have to be okay with that, and you have to just keep going despite that, and know that like it just takes one person to say yes, and that's all you need. So, and I always like, especially when I was, you know, starting out, I would, every time I was rejected, I would be like, okay, every rejection is one, means I'm one step closer to succeeding. And I would just look at it that way, rather than, you know, of course I get down and I get depressed and like this is never going to happen, but I just would try to look at it that way. Being rejected means you're putting yourself out there, which means you're getting closer.
Cool. Let's move on. How did taking creative writing at BC help you with writing for TV?
Creative writing at BC.
At UBC.
Yeah, no, hugely, because I really believe in the 10,000 hours. Like you have to put in your hours to learn how to be a writer. Like the only way to become a good writer is by putting in those hours and trying and failing and trying and failing and workshopping and finding people that you can share your work with. It was huge. It was huge for me.
And then we have another question from another two questions from Linda. Would you say is writing a lucrative career? And if you can recommend any writing groups?
I think, like anything, writing can be a lucrative career, but yeah, I mean, I wrote for free for 5 years before I got paid for it. So I had to do that. Writing groups. I don't know what writers groups means. I recommend getting a group of writers for yourself to, as I have with the people that I met at UBC, that we share our work with each other, and that's been absolutely invaluable to me.
Cool. And what is your writing process like? Do you write daily? And yeah, such.
I write Monday to Friday. I take the weekends off. I write first thing in the morning, and I go for as long as I can, which is usually about, I would say, 3 to 4 hours of focused work.
Wow. Nice. And let's take a question from Sasha. How has the pandemic impacted your writing process personally?
Well, at the beginning, I have been like a coffee shop writer for my whole life, where I get up, I leave the house, I go write at a coffee shop. I just like the energy. I like getting up and going somewhere. It just makes me mentally feel like I I'm here to work. So that's been an adjustment, but I mean, really, I settled into working at home pretty quickly, and it's been fine. And as Peggy knows, I have a dog, and so who I'm actually dog sitting for, but she's now stuck with me because of the pandemic, she's my parents' dog, and we can't give her back because the borders are closed. So it's been really nice having her because I have a little coworker when I'm writing at home.
That's cool. How long were you working on set before you had progress with writing? Trying to get a sense of years and time.
I worked in production for about 3 years, and then during that time realized I wanted to be a writer, and then did the creative writing undergrad.
Cool. And then we have someone who's over 40 and tempted to apply to CFC, I think. And the person is wondering if you found people from a variety of backgrounds at CFC.
Yes, definitely. I mean, definitely a variety of backgrounds and ages and races, and it's just, I think that I'm fairly certain you do have to be Canadian, or be a Canadian resident.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good to know. What would you say is really important to remember when you pitch a show? What do you usually lead with?
Always, why am I writing this? Why me? What does this mean to me? Yeah, it all goes back to, like, if I don't have that personal connection to it, then I need that. I need that in order to feel like, with Mary Kills People, it was like I had my own very complicated emotions about death, and I needed to work it out for myself. And so I tend to write from that place of wanting to discover something or figure something out, and I need that thing. So I start with why I'm passionate about it.
Can you remember your Mary Kills People pitch? Can you pitch it for us now? Briefly?
Oh God,
I mean, just the short.
I don't. I mean, something probably along those lines of just being obsessed with death, and the fact that we're a very death denying society, and I didn't think that was right. And the thing that is good about that too is that it's completely relatable to anybody in the room. Also will have feelings about death and experiences, and so I think when you can tap into, like, emotion in other people as well, it can be really valuable.
And I'll just say this about Mary. And we talked about this before, you've got that tension right in the creation of the character. She's a doctor saved lives, but she also takes life. Mm-hmm. So it's a big conflict right there.
Mm-hmm. Yes,
that gets people in the room interested as well. It's like, okay, I can see that.
Yes, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice.
Cool. And what would you say, what are the most challenging things about your career and the rewards?
I think the most challenging things just continue to be, they're no different really than they were when I was first starting to write, which is really just showing up every day, facing a blank page, going through all of the doubt and insecurity of, like, is this going to work? Is what I'm doing valuable? Do I really have something to say? Just that process of creativity is challenging for me. And because it's really like facing the unknown. It's scary. And it, for me, like, it hasn't gotten easier. The only thing that I am able to sort of recognize now is that when I'm feeling like the doubt and the insecurity, that I always feel that, and that the only thing I can do is just continue to move forward and try to just like make friends with like the fear and the doubt and all of that. But not let it get me to spiral into like, oh, you know, this should be easier. If I was a better writer, this would be easier, or this should go away now, or whatever it is. I just think that that's like any, you know, any sort of creative endeavor, you're gonna, for me, that's what I find the most challenging. The rewards are, I mean, it is a super fun job. Like, it's super challenging, but like when you're having a good day, and you know, I love the writer's room, like, and when you're working with people that you love and you're really getting somewhere, and you feel like you're really, you know, you're really in the flow of that creative energy. I love that. It's like the best. It's such a cool job.
Cool. Yeah, we have about 5 to 7 minutes more. There's lots of questions coming in, which is awesome. So we'll try to answer as many as possible, but we might not get to all of them. Was there any pushback to you being the co-showrunner, as you didn't have any real writing room experience at the start of Mary? If so, how did you overcome that?
So in the first season, I wasn't officially co-show running, but I was like able to like do, like, learn and do all of the things. But I don't know that I necessarily would have wanted to, because, or to have, you know, just jumped right in and been the showrunner. I think I had a lot to learn, and I still have a lot to learn, but yeah, I was able to, like, I was as involved as you could be in all the creative, and I'm lucky for that. And I think you know, I had really strong feelings about what the show should be. So I think that, you know, like when you feel something so strongly creatively, like I kind of wasn't gonna let it just be completely taken, which is tricky to navigate. But yeah, I think it worked out.
Mm-hmm. And then maybe we can take one of the three next questions. So was it important to you to keep it a Canadian production? Mary Kills People, I presume.
When I wrote it originally, because I had always sort of had this desire to live in LA, I actually set it in LA. and
right.
Yeah, it's so funny to think about that now, like how different it would have been if it was set in LA, because it's a completely different city. But you know, it's sold in Canada, it's sold to a Canadian broadcaster. So in Canada, you typically have to like say this is a Canadian location. But yeah, so it wasn't my initial instinct to put it in Canada, but I'm happy it worked out. Beautiful, like we got beautiful locations because of it, because it was set in Toronto, and you know, it gave it a really cool vibe, I think.
Lovely. What would you say, what's the biggest difference you found between working in the Canadian and US market?
I mean, there's more money in the US. In Canada, things are very constrained by budgets, and in Canada, there are the sort of level of government involvement is like much more in Canada, in terms of like you get certain tax credits if you if you have Canadian components to the story, and you know, that can, in the US, it just doesn't exist. I would say that. And in the US, there's just more places to go, more, but I mean, there's just so many places here.
Yeah. And have you thought at all about the future and, you know, masks and all these safety safety guidelines that might come? Will they not, like scenes with masks? Is that going to be a thing at all, or, you know, have you got?
I've read a lot of articles about this because I'm really interested in how other writers are approaching this, and I'm not there yet in terms of like setting like what I'm writing now in a post coronavirus world where like the world is fundamentally changed, although I might be wrong in not doing that. But I think it's a lot of writers are like, I've read some articles where, especially that shows that are in production, like where they feel like it, you know, it's disingenuous to just pretend that it's not happening and not address it in the stories that they're telling. And so they are. I think it's like hard to know how to handle it because we're in the middle of it and we don't know what it's going to look like on the other side. And yeah, I don't know. It'll be really, really interesting to see. And also when production will be able to go forward again and how that will work.
And I would say we're possibly not quite at in the middle of it. I'd say we're at the end of the first act of it.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
We'll bring Helen back. You can turn your video back on, Helen, because I think we might have to bring it to a close here. There we go. Helen, are you back?
I think I am. Hello. Thank you very much, Peggy and Tara. It was amazing listening to you, and for all of you who have listened to Tara and Peggy or would like to recommend this, it will be available on the WIFTI International YouTube channel. So, and it was fantastic. So nice to listen. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it as much as I do, even if it's midnight here in Sweden right now. I stayed awake, and that's not usual for me. You must know that. So thanks a lot, and hope to see you soon again. For all of you who are listening, next week we will have the third WIFTI Worldwide webinar, and that time we will be in Scotland. We will meet a producer and psychologist, Rebecca Day, and we will talk with her about this current situation, life crisis, well-being, and I promise you it will be really interesting. Rebecca has specialized working with film companies, mostly documentaries, but she has a lot of interesting things to tell. Next Wednesday, and it will be 4 o'clock UK time. But it will also be available later on the WIFTI website. So thank you all. Thank you, Peggy. Thank you, Tara. Have a nice time and goodbye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye, everyone. Stay safe.